Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next installment of our Let's Talk on Facebook Live. Once again, my name is Sherry Egland, and I am coming to you representing Omni Youth Programs, which is a nonprofit in Sacramento, California. And our mission is focusing on preventing alcohol and other drug use by teens and empowering young people to make the best choices they can for whatever future that they really want. So really it's about empowering young people to make good choices and prevent problems before they happen. Some of you might be returning from our Let's Talk Pot series. We're starting a new series this time about alcohol. We're going to talk a little bit about alcohol. Little do people know that alcohol really is still the #1 drug used by young people. And it's concerning because if you add up all the deaths from all other drugs combined, they still don't equal the amount that alcohol is responsible for. And we're talking about people under the age of 21. So deaths of young people. Alcohol is still responsible for more deaths of young people, again, than all other drugs combined. So that's kind of a big deal. But specifically concerning alcohol, today we're going to talk about what's the difference between someone being passed out and then waking up the next day with a bad hangover, or when someone is passed out and they don't wake up at all, they die. So really we're talking about alcohol poisoning, which is, it's a heavy subject, I know. And I know that sometimes you can think of stories that you've heard or even someone you know, things you've heard through the media about people that go to parties or hang out with friends and end up never making it home again. And they thought, hey, it's just alcohol, so what's the big deal? Well, it is a big deal. And not only for those who are drinking, but those around them. So what can you do? How do you know when someone has reached that point where they may not wake up the next day? And what do you do? What do you do about that? We're going to talk about that today. First, though, it's important to point out, again, like I said at the beginning, we are a youth prevention agency. We really want to work on preventing young people from using alcohol and drugs. And as we've talked about before, it's particularly important for young people because your brains are in such a crucial stage of development, really up until the age of 25. Even though legally you can drink up to 21, we really encourage young people to wait until you're 21, even later if you want to, but at least wait until 21 because your brain is in such a crucial stage of development. And alcohol just affects young people much differently than it affects people who are, say, my age and drink. My brain stopped developing quite a long time ago. Not going to tell you how long ago, because some of you might be good at math and be able to figure out how old I am. But those of you that are watching today and are under the age of 25, really from the time your preteens start all the way through, especially 21, 22 years old, your brain is in a crucial stage where it's growing and learning and making all kinds of connections. And addiction also is a lot higher for those that start using alcohol at a younger age. Really, the younger you start, the first time you use alcohol, the more likely the risk is that you have to deal with alcohol addiction as an adult. Those two numbers kind of reflect each other. And it's important to talk about too because here's a statistic that kind of concerns me, especially as a parent, but when people who are under 21 drink alcohol 90% of the time, so that's 9 out of 10 times when people are drinking, they are drinking in the form of what we call binge drinking. So they're not just having a drink or two, or they're not just having a sip. When people drink under the age of 21, 9 out of 10 times they are binge drinking. So what is binge drinking? Binge drinking is really, there's a couple of different definitions, but most of them agree. It's when you drink to the point of drunkenness or to where your blood alcohol gets over that 0.08. And so how do you know? Not a lot of us walk around with the breathalyzer. We can't test our blood alcohol level on the fly a lot of times. But how do you know? Well, usually binge drinking is if you drink more than 4 drinks in 2 hours if you're a woman, and 5 drinks in 2 hours if you're a man. Now you notice it's different between the female and male. That's because the female body processes alcohol a little differently than the male. So women and men really can't go drink for drink. Alcohol affects women a little more intensely and a little more seriously. So again, binge drinking is any more than 4 drinks in 2 hours for women or 5 drinks in 2 hours for men. So if you drink over that, you are binge drinking, and you are kind of in the danger zone. Now, again, there's no safe amount for anyone under 21. There's no such thing as a safe amount of alcohol, again, because your brain is in such a critical stage. But if you're kind of wondering how much is too much, that's generally what the medical community and the recovery community can usually agree on. Again, 4 drinks in 2 hours for women, 5 drinks in 2 hours for men. But what is a drink? Is this a drink? If I fill this up, is that 1 drink? No. So you have to be careful when you're counting your drinks. Here's what 1 drink is considered. This is about 12 ounces, and if this is filled with beer, just regular kind of about 5% alcohol beer, that's considered 1 drink. Or if you're drinking a little bit harder like malt liquor or hard cider or something like that, with about 7% alcohol, 8 ounces, which will fill this, is considered 1 drink. So you can tell this is quite a lot less than this. And if you're drinking wine, which is about around 12% alcohol usually, 5 ounces is considered 1 drink. That will fill up this little glass right here. So here's my hand and here's the glass. So I don't know about you, but I've seen people pour glasses of wine quite a bit bigger than that. And then if you're taking a shot of hard alcohol or something that's usually around 80 proof which is about 40% alcohol is kind of the average, that is 1 drink. So whether you have a beer or a shot, that is considered 1 drink. So if you're somebody who pours a glass of wine that might be maybe 2 of these full of wine, you got to count that as 2 drinks when you're totaling those up. So that's important to consider. And a little side note, this, like I said, if this is filled with beer, this is considered 1 drink, that's 12 ounces. The red Solo cup, which is very popular, especially for young people at parties and group parties, that kind of typical red Solo cup, those are 15 ounces. And remember, the beer, regular beer, 12 ounces. So that's even more. So if you're drinking a Solo cup, like out of a keg or something else, that's more than 1 serving. That's more than 1 drink. So it's important to keep in mind. So let's get to what we were going to talk about. How do you know when someone has consumed alcohol and is in danger? Well, here are some of the signs or symptoms, as they call it. One is if they're very confused, they can't seem to hold a conversation, they're slurring their words. Sometimes they don't know where they are. You ask them basic facts and they can't answer that, like what's your name, what's your address, who's the president, you know, those kind of things. They often ask those in ER rooms just to see if a person is conscious and able to communicate. The other symptom is vomiting, and we all know people that vomit sometimes when they're drinking. Seizures is another thing. Even with somebody who don't typically suffer from a seizure disorder, seizures can happen when somebody is experiencing alcohol poisoning. But a big one to look at is slow breathing. So what's slow breathing? If they have less than 8 breaths in 1 minute, that's a sign something is wrong. So you can kind of maybe put your hand on their chest or lower your cheek to just right above their mouth and kind of count, kind of watch either time it on your phone or watch your watch and time how many breaths they take in a minute. If it's less than 8, that's very dangerous. And even irregular breathing which is kind of different than, believe it or not, slow breathing. Irregular breathing is if they have more than 10 seconds in between breaths. So that's kind of something you're doing when you're counting. So less than 8 breaths in 1 minute or more than 10 seconds between breaths. Like if they take a breath, that's a sign that something's wrong, if there's a big gap in between breaths. Another thing that happens is their skin gets kind of a blue tin or really pale look. almost like somebody you see typically, like if they fall in really cold water and their skin gets this blue tinge and it's really pale and sometimes kind of clammy to the touch. But something that's really important to check on is if they are completely unconscious. Can you wake them up? Try to shake them, call their name, do something called painful stimuli, which is where you take your knuckles, and if you can feel this hard part right here on your chest bone, don't do it to yourself because it really does hurt, but if you take your knuckles and rub it hard right here on somebody, that's something that, again, they do in ambulances and ERs. They try to tell if somebody is conscious or not. If you're pushing here, that actually is quite painful, and if they're not responding, that's not a good sign. You can try pinching them, anything that kind of a little bit of hurt. Definitely you don't want to smack them because that's not okay. But painful stimulus or a little pinch or something. If they're not responding, you need to call 911 immediately. Now, all of the things I listed are important, but especially if the person is not responding in any way. So I've heard from a lot of young people that there have been times where I thought I probably should call 911, but I'm a little nervous because I'm under 21 and it's illegal for me to drink. Or maybe you've partaken in some other illegal activities that night and so you're worried. Here's the good news. No matter what your age, there's something in California and other states, but California specifically has something called the Good Samaritan Law. Now that means if you're with somebody who's overdosing, whether it's alcohol or drugs or no matter what it is, if you call 911 and if you stay with the person until help arrives, you won't get in any trouble. You're free from any legal, you're not going to get arrested, you're not going to get a record, but you do have to stay with them. You can't call 911 and then leave. If they later find out who you were and you left, then you can be in trouble. But don't ever hesitate. 911, really, I'm not a medical doctor. A lot of you listening out there aren't EMTs or doctors. If you kind of have an instinct that some of these things are happening and a friend or even somebody, a complete stranger, needs help, 911 is the first thing you want to do. Now, if you're not able to call 911, you want to point out somebody in the crowd, but you want to call them out specifically. Don't just say, somebody call 911. Because if you're in a crowd of people, especially at a loud party or event, everybody might assume somebody else is doing it. So you want to say, you in the blue hat, red shirt, call 911 and kind of look at them and make sure that's something they're doing. And while they're calling 911, again, you want to stay with the person until help arrives. Do not leave them. Monitor their breathing. Again, very gently put your hand right here on their chest. You want to avoid touching anybody in an inappropriate way, but you can tell somebody's breath's like this, or by, again, leaning your cheek kind of against them and feeling when their breath comes out. So monitor their breathing. If you know CPR or have taken CPR, you can do that. If you can tell their breathing has slowed dramatically or stopped, you can kind of start CPR. It's really important to make sure, especially if they're vomiting, or even if they haven't yet, just in case they're going to start, you want to make sure the person is either on their side or sitting up. Sitting up is the best, but that's kind of hard sometimes if somebody's really having a hard time and has really overdone it. If they have to lay down, you want to make sure they're on their side, not on their back, not on their stomach, because they can choke and die sometimes for when the vomit gets caught in their airway. So that's really important. If they can take it, if they start talking a little bit, communicating, and you can give them a little bit of water, that's okay. But again, don't give water if they're unresponsive, because they might end up choking. It's almost like drowning, kind of. If you're not able to swallow the water, that's not good. Now, do not give caffeine. I know sometimes in some TV shows or movies you watch, they say, oh, give him a cup of coffee and help him sober up. Don't give him caffeine. That, first of all, that does not help you sober up. The only thing that helps you sober up is time. That's the only thing that works. All these other things you hear, they do not work. But caffeine actually can make the dehydration worse. And that's one of the worst parts of alcohol poisoning, is how dehydrated your body gets. And that sometimes is what leads to death. So don't give them any caffeine. If you can do it safely and the person is in the sun, you want to move them out of the sun into the shade. Again, because of that dehydration thing. But you don't want to make them walk around. That's another thing. Sometimes the TV and the movies have told us that isn't true. You don't want to walk, so, oh, come on, let's walk around, you know, put them over your shoulder. Definitely don't want to do that because they can fall very easily and injure themselves, especially a head injury is very common in those falls. Again, because remember, the person, if they're not able to hold themselves up, you should not be holding them up. Sitting is best, again, but if they can't sit, laying on the side is a good alternative for that. And also another thing, cold showers do not help. Do not throw somebody in the shower and turn the water on. Remember the thing I said about not being able to swallow and possibly drowning? That's bad. Also, hypothermia is really common in people that have alcohol poisoning. Their body temperature can get really low. So a blanket is actually better if you do kind of touch their skin and they feel like their body temperature is way colder than it should be. But for sure, don't put them in the shower because they might not be able to swallow water and drown, or you might make the hypothermia worse. So don't do that. So those are the best tips that I have for you now. And again, most importantly, if you're not sure, just call 911. They will handle it. And again, because of the Good Samaritan law, you cannot get in any trouble for doing that. And there is no safe amount of alcohol. If you're under 21, it's not a safe thing for you to do. So there might be some of you out there who are under 21 and you want to go to parties. You want to be social. You want to have fun. You want to be around your friends. But the pressure to drink can be quite real. Well, we have some resources for you on that. If you go to YouTube and look up Omni Youth Programs, look up our YouTube channel, there's a video on there about tips for teens that want to go to parties and have fun but don't want to drink. There's a couple little tricks in there that we talk about. We also have, if you go to our website at omniyouth.net, there is some really cool blog articles about kind of written first person, people that were this is from the article, they called themselves the Sober Sally. They're always the one in the group that didn't drink, and they talk about that, how it was going through college being the one that didn't drink and how they did that. And again, also some tips on how to do that. How can I avoid drinking at a party if I'm under 21? And honestly, even if you are 21, you still don't have to drink. You can have a wonderful time, and you can be the person that really makes a difference in somebody else's life and helps them get home safely. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm seeing all kinds of comments coming in from Chris and Cynthia and Jennifer. That's so great. Oh, and Leon, it's so great to hear from you. I haven't heard from you in a while. I've seen you on Facebook, but so great to see your face on there. But again, please check out, feel free to message me if you have any questions. We are going to have another Let's Talk Alcohol coming up soon. If there's a particular subject that you would like to hear about, feel free to email me. Again, that's sherry@omniyouth.net. You can message me through our Facebook page, any of those things. I would love to know, what do you want to talk about? What are some things you've always been curious about or you'd like to learn more about? But until next time, thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye, everybody.